Dave's doing a video and it's not the end of the month yet. Well, don't panic. It's because it's Towel Day, which is Sunday the 25th, which is the day when Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy fans celebrate the life and works of Douglas Adams, its creator. So, I'm going to run through some stuff relating to Douglas Adams and his life and his works. There's an awful lot of stuff out there. I've got quite a bit of it, but not all of it by any means. Certainly I haven't got any of the American releases of things. So, who is this Douglas Adams, you might ask? Born on the 11th of March 1952 in Cambridge. English writer. Once out of Cambridge and footlights, he got a job at the BBC. And he started off working on Doctor Who and things like that. And he pitched an idea for a series called The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. And they picked it up, and it was first broadcast on the week of his 26th birthday from the 8th of March 1978. There was a first series of 6 episodes which started on the 8th of March, and then there was a Christmas special which was essentially the start of a second series, which was in December. In 1978 he was also writing a Doctor Who serial called The Pirate Planet. In 1979, because the radio series had been successful, they released a record of it. It was a re-recording. It wasn't the radio recording was just kind of reused. It was, and in fact, most of the cast were the same people, but 1 or 2 changes. And this was a double record, which is that. And the sleeve design for that was by Hypnosis, who are best known for their Pink Floyd album covers and lots of other rock and roll music covers. And in addition to that record, he offered the BBC Books the chance to do a book, and they went, "No, you're all right, thanks." So he passed it on to other publishers, and Pan picked it up, and Pan Macmillan published that, which obviously reuses the artwork from the record. So that was in 1979. At this point, he was working as a script editor for Doctor Who. He'd written a co-writer of another serial called City of Death, and he wrote another one called Sharda, which fell foul of production problems and never got finished. In 1980, they finished off the second radio series, and that spun off into a second book, which was called The Restaurant at the End of the Universe. Signed copy. Unsigned copies are rarer, is the big joke. Because he signed a lot of them. In addition to that, in what may be seen as a fitting piece of temporal anomaly, 1980, a single was released which said Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy TV theme music. And the reason that's a temporal anomaly is because the TV series wasn't broadcast until 81. Anyway, there we are. Another thing that also came out in 1980 is a second record featuring the same cast as the first record. This was only one disc. The lettering is a bit hard to see on there, but it does say The Restaurant at the End of the Universe. Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy Part 2. So that's that. Then in 1981, the TV series was broadcast. And spin-off from that, there were 2 sort of novelty singles featuring the robot from the series, Marvin, the paranoid android, as voiced by Stephen Moore, who co-wrote the things with Adams. So Marvin the Paranoid Android and Marvin the Paranoid Android, the double B-side. In addition to this, in 1981 also, Stephen Moore contributed to a audiobook version of the thing on cassette, double cassette. That was released through EMI and Music for Pleasure. Then we get to 1982, and there's a third book, which is called Life, the Universe and Everything. Which is the first one not entirely based on the radio series. Then there is also in 82 audio cassette audio books of the second book, Restaurant in the Universe, again Stephen Moore. Then in 1983, Douglas Adams and John Lloyd, who had helped him co-write the last couple of episodes of Hitchhikers on the radio, went off on a holiday together, and while they were there lounging around, they wrote a little book called The Meaning of Life. So this book will change your life. This is comedy definitions using place names. That was 1983. In 1984, Adams came back and wrote a fourth Hitchhiker's book called So Long and Thanks for All the Fish. Now I don't know if you could, will that do that? There we go. You see that? That's a lenticular image that's got two things of a walrus and a plesiosaur, I think. So that's the fourth one of those. And then we get the third one and the fourth one again on Stephen Moore audio cassettes. Then in 1985, Pan issue a book of the radio scripts from those first two series. At this point, that's a version I haven't got. In 1986, Adams, along with Peter Fincham, co-edited this charity book for Comic Relief, the Utterly Merry Comic Relief Christmas book. And as well as editing it, he contributed a few bits and bobs, which include the first appearance of a short Hitchhiker's Guide story called Young Zaphod Plays It Safe. Some supplements to The Meaning of Life, which eventually ended up in a sequel book called The Deeper Meaning of Life. A thing co-written with Terry Jones called A Christmas Fairly Story. And a short story called The Private Life of Genghis Khan, which ties into the Hitchhiker's universe by featuring a common character, Wowbagger, the infinitely prolonged. That's 1986. 1987, he got a bit bored with being pestered about Hitchhiker's content and decided to go in a different direction and wrote this, Dirk Gently's Holistic Detective Agency, which is described as, by the author, a thumping good detective, ghost, horror, whodunit, time travel, romantic musical comedy epic. Dirk Gently. Around this time, because he'd become known and famous, other people were kind of starting to kind of write about him. This is by someone who is now somewhat out of favour, but at the time, Neil Gaiman wrote a book called Don't Panic, the official Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy companion, which covered all the stuff that Adams had been doing up until that point. Then Adams wrote a sequel to Dirk Gently, which was called The Long Dark Tea Time of the Soul, and that came out in 1988. At this point, the BBC realised that they could get some merch sales from Hitchhikers, so they put out the first two radio series on this set of 6 audio cassettes, and this was 1988. In 1989, Adams went on a sort of natural history tour with the biologist, zoologist Mark Carwardine, and they came back with a 6-part radio series looking at rare creatures that were possibly on the verge of extinction, which was called Last Chance to See, and that was broadcast on the radio in October and November. And when they did that, I recorded it onto cassette myself off the radio. I don't think there has ever been an official audio release of that series, so those self-recorded tapes probably a good idea. In 1989, there was another comic relief book, which is called the Utterly Amusing and Pretty Damn Definitive Comic Relief Review Book, which has got scripts of sketches and things for people to perform. This included Douglas Adams' Kamikaze Pilot sketch. He's a pilot who has flown many missions because he's afraid of actually doing what kamikazes are supposed to do. Then also in 1989, Heinemann published a book of Adams and Carwardine's Last Chance to See to accompany the previous year's radio series. This is 1990. Then Adams and Lloyd produced a sort of sequel to The Meaning of Life called The Deeper Meaning of Life, which included the additions that were in the Utterly Merry Comic Relief Christmas book, but also plenty of other ones as well. By the way, yes. Then at this point, because there had been 4 books of Hitchhikers, it was worth producing an omnibus edition, which Heinemann did. So that's Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, a trilogy in 4 parts. This one, you may be amused, I have as a bookmark, hot black Desiato business card. If you don't know Hitchhikers, you won't know why that's interesting, but there we are. In 1992, Adams came back belatedly to the Hitchhiker's universe and wrote a 5th book called Mostly Harmless. Mixed opinions about that one. And also in 1992, VHS video cassettes. Do you remember those? The BBC put out the original television series on 2 VHS cassettes. And they also put out Sharda. And so if you remember what I said a couple of minutes ago, Sharda was unfinished. So we've got the bits that were filmed interspersed with narration by Tom Baker. And in addition to which, there's a paperback of the scripts included with the video cassette. So that's that in 1992. In 1994, we had this thing, which was jolly expensive at the time, and I didn't buy it until many years later, which is the illustrated Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, if you can see that in amongst that silver cover, which is really before the days of Photoshop. This was using state-of-the-art photo editing stuff, which was yes, I think how much that cost? That was 25 quid at the time, which felt like a lot for a slim book, but in retrospect, good stuff. So that's when is that? That's 1994. At that point, Adams is working with computer game manufacturers on a computer game called Starship Titanic. At the end of which it was suggested that a spin-off novel should be written, and Adams kind of went, "Yes, that's a good idea, but I can't be asked to do that." So he got his friend Terry Jones to write it. So Terry Jones' name, as well as Douglas Adams, is on the Starship Titanic novel. Then we get a few years of hiatus, and then in 2001, sadly, Douglas Adams passes away at the premature age of 49. But that doesn't stop people putting out stuff under his name. In just the very next year, in 2002, Macmillan scraped together all the bits and bobs, articles and lectures he'd given, and short pieces he'd written for newspapers and magazines, along with fragments of things that were going to be more Dirk Gently and more Hitchhiker stuff, and that was called The Salmon of Doubt. Now, then in 2003, Pan reissued that radio script book with some additional bits and bobs and a new introduction. That's the version I've got, so that's the original radio scripts from the first two radio series. Also, at that point, you start getting biographies. There was this one, an unofficial one by M.J. Simpson called Hitchhiker. And this one, an official one called Wish You Were Here by Nick Webb. Then in 2004, they started replaying the radio series on the radio, including new versions that were adapted using as much as possible of the original cast by Dirk Maggs, and so there were audio releases of those. So the third series, which is based on the third book, was called The Tertiary Phase. So that's based on Life, the Universe and Everything. So here I've got that on 3 audio cassettes. In addition to which, the BBC also put out this thing, Douglas Adams at the BBC, which is just a collection of all sorts of things that he did on the radio. And then there was an adaptation, again using Dirk Maggs's expertise with the original cast of the 4th book, which is So Long, Thanks for the Fish, and so that became the Quandary Phase, and that's 2005. And then later in 2005, that was kind of May, and then into June they did the 5th book, Mostly Harmless, which is the quintessential phase. And having done that, Pan then did a paired scripts book for those 3, 4 and 5 series. So that's 2005. And then in 2005, the long gestated and long worked upon film came out, and everybody went, nah. But the film, so haven't got that on video, DVD, anything like that. I've got a making of book, which is by Robbie Stamp, and soundtrack album by Joby Talbot. Then at this point also, 2007, the BBC did a radio dramatisation of that first Dirk Gently book, with Harry Enfield playing the part of Dirk Gently, and Olivia Colman was in it, who's now gone to much more famous things. And then in 2008, a BBC radio dramatisation of the second Dirk Gently book. 2009, they thought it would be a good idea to let somebody else write a 6th Hitchhiker's book. Again, the fans went, yay, and then read it and went, nah. Which was And Another Thing by Owen Colfer, best known otherwise for the Artemis Fowl series. Also in 2009, there was a sequel to Last Chance to See, the thing that Adams had done with Mark Carwardine. And this time Carwardine went out with Adams' good friend Stephen Fry and did a second set of travels. So that's the book for the sequel series. Then in 2012 there was a live radio show tour. So as many of the casters were still around, and Dirk Maggs, the radio producer, and some various other people took the show to theatres and concert halls around the country. In June of 2012, it came to my town, and there was lots of merch that you could buy associated with the show, which included you could get T-shirts such as this one here, Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy Live Radio Show, or this one here, Milliways, the restaurant at the end of the universe. In addition to which you could get a miniature towel which said "Don't Panic" on one end, and the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy Live Radio Show Tour on the other end. You could get a USB stick in the shape of the Babel fish, which will make sense if you know the series. And you could get a little keyring with Marvin the paranoid android on it. In addition to which you could also get mugs like what I've just had my tea in. Then other people were given permission to write novelisations based on those Doctor Who scripts that Adams had written. One of the first of those was Sharda, the unfinished series, and that was novelised by Gareth Roberts. Then there was a TV series on the BBC that was based on Dirk Gently. Daniel Pemberton did the soundtrack for that. There it is. It's got Stephen Mangan on that. Then you get various other things that are kind of tangentially related. Palgrave Macmillan, the company I used to work for, did a book that was kind of philosophy and the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, edited by Nicholas Joel. So this was various philosophers writing about topics that were sort of spun off from Hitchhikers. The meaning of life, artificial intelligence, those kind of things. Then John Lloyd wrote or co-wrote with John Cantor another Meaning of Life sequel called After Life. And then we got another biography. This one's called The Frood by Jem Roberts. And then we get this other sort of adaptation of Dirk Gently, which is much looser and kind of the brainchild of some Americans. One of which was released in a bunch of kind of comic book forms, which ended up then being assembled into this, what's called the big holistic graphic novel. Now we've got the cast from the TV series being featured on there, which we'll come to in a moment. Then we've got another one of the adaptations of the Doctor Who stories. This is James Goss doing City of Death. And then the BBC decided it was worth putting out a CD series, 6-disc thing of the two radio dramatisations of Dirk Gently that they had done 8 years before, 8 years before. The American version of Dirk Gently, here we are, featuring Elijah Wood and Samuel Barnett. There were 2 seasons of that. I think only season 1 got a region 2 DVD, so therefore I would be able to watch it here in the UK. I think it was only a region 1 release for the second series. Then we have, what else do we have? Then there was another James Goss Doctor Who adaptation book, which was The Pirate Planet. I haven't got that one. Then the BBC put out the original TV series, again this time on DVD. This is getting into 2018. In 2018, that 6th series, the one based on the Owen Colfer novel rather than the Douglas Adams ones, comes out what they call the hexagonal phase. So that's the CDs from the 6th radio series. Excuse me a moment, I'm going to have to stand these up. Right. And then the BBC, you've got a music arm called Demon Records, and they decided that with the vinyl revival, it was worth putting out all those original series on sort of deluxe hardback book vinyl releases. So we have the first series, The Primary Phase, which was, how many discs was that? Several. 1, 2, 3 discs, and if you bought it quick enough, you got a signed print, and the signed print, again out of favour now, was by Neil Gaiman, who was a friend of Adams and who wrote a little foreword. So that's the first one of those, and that came out in 2018. And then also in 2018, another similar one for the second series, the secondary phase. This was also 3 discs, and this time another signed print. There we are. Who was it this time? Can I read that? I can't read that. I can't remember who it was. I think it was Paddy Kingsland who did the music for the radio series. That's about right, I think. Yes. So those were in 2018. Then in 2019, you've got another one of the Doctor Who novelisations. This is Doctor Who and the Cricket Men. Excuse me. This is Doctor Who and the Cricket Men, which is very closely related to the 3rd Hitchhiker's book, because that's what Adams was reusing bits of the Doctor Who story for the Hitchhiker's story. And then in 2019, you get 3 more sets of LPs for the tertiary phase. Look at this lot here, and in this one the signed print is by the producer Dirk Maggs. Put that in there. See, I'm keeping these in vinyl covers. Keep them in decent nick. And then the 4th series, the Quandary Phase. It's that. And the print in this one is signed by Stephen Fry. And you can probably guess what's coming next. Is the 5th series, the Quintessential Phase. And finally, if you can see that on there, that is signed by Simon Jones, who plays Arthur Dent, the lead character in the whole series. And why they didn't think of him earlier, I do not know. So then, in addition to that, there was a play written about Douglas Adams and his struggles with procrastination, called We Apologise for the Inconvenience by Mark Griffiths, and that came out on vinyl. I went and I saw that at an event at the British Library. And then finally the hexagonal phase, number 6, based on the Aaron Colfer book. That's that one, and that's got a signed print by Jeff McGivern, who plays Ford Prefect in the radio series. Again, why not him earlier? Yeah. Then at that point, Pan Books, what are we up to now? We're at 2020. Pan Books did a reissue of all the books for the 42nd anniversary of the radio series, 78 to 2020. So here's a set of postcards that they produced, showcasing the new cover designs for the new issues of the books. In 2020, well, they've been doing many years a thing called a Douglas Adams Memorial Lecture. I went to one of these in 2021, and there was some merch that you could buy, which again included this T-shirt. So you can see it tells there that presented by Baroness Susan Greenfield, and there were some other guest speakers. And the other thing you could also get was a towel. And yes, it's in aid of Save the Rhino, which was a charity that Adams was supportive of, and he actually wore a rhino costume for some, I think it was a marathon, something like that. Then in 2021, Pan put out again a 42nd anniversary edition of the book with illustrations by Chris Riddell. There's a illustrated front flap, and then there are black and white illustrations inside as well. That's 2021, and then in 2023, as well as doing the second book, Restaurant at the End of the Universe, again with colourful illustrations by Chris Riddell on the end papers, and black and white ones on the inside. You also got this book by Kevin John Davis, which was through the, again, now sadly defunct and slightly troubled publisher, Unbound. Kevin John Davis, 42, The Wildly Improbable Ideas of Douglas Adams. Kevin John Davis has got a second book in progress that was supposed to be with Unbound, so we're waiting to see what's going to happen to that now. That, I think, is all my Douglas Adams / Hitchhiker stuff. You see the poster on the wall behind me there came as part of a sort of dust jacket for this book. I think that picture might be one of those. Anyway, so that is towel day for you. We'll see how much more, if anything, comes from the estate of Douglas Adams. Until next time, by the end of the month, I'll be back on my soundtrack stuff. Stay fresh, cheese bags.